Everyone. A very warm good afternoon, good morning to the people who are joining from different parts of the world. How are you all? Um, let the people join so that we can begin the session. And I, on the behalf of research graduate, welcomes all of you. Today we have a very unique topic. Rather, I would say that most of the people who are doing their research, be on the facade of PhD, be in the facade of their normal research papers, they kind of struggle when we talk about statistical analysis. So today we are going to touch upon that topic, and I'll try to brush up the concepts in such a way that most of you can have a hold on the concepts which we have been discussing, which we'll be discussing in the session. All right. So let's begin with this. And as I told you that I'm welcoming you on the behalf of research graduates. So when you talk about the research queries, be on any facade of your thesis writing, or your topic selection, or your proofreading, editing, everything is can be cornered by research graduate. So you may be rest assured that research graduate is a one stop solution for all of you. Okay, so you may get in touch with our team, and for that, you may browse us on researchgraduate.com. The number is on the screen, and so as your the email ID. Okay. So let me tell you about the webinar structure for today. Today we'll be talking about, like we do in all the webinars, like 90 minutes or so. It can be, stretch more than 90 minutes, and depends upon the topic of the discussion in hand. When it comes to question and answer, we generally have it for 30 minutes, but we all the time we make sure that all of your queries are answered, so it's not 30 minutes deadline all the time. We may stretch beyond that too. PPTs, certificates, recordings, all of you will be sent to you on your registered email ID, so make sure that you join with the correct email ID, or all your details having your email IDs are correct so far. Plus, one more very important thing, those who are joining from phones, please make sure that you might can face a little glitch. However, for others, please increase your video quality on YouTube for 720p. All right. So, whosoever is having a visibility issues or concerns, please get in touch with your internet connection as well, and increase the video quality as per the specified dimensions on the screen. Okay. All right. So now it's time to start our webinar. Now, firstly, the topic in hand today is something which is, which gives goosebumps to many. Statistical analysis. When it comes to statistics, we just somehow surrender somewhere or the other. One thing I would like to clear, that research has statistic in it, but research does not synonymize statistic altogether. So you can't equate research with statistic, that research is all just about statistics. No. Having said that, I do not mean that you can ignore statistics. And also, when you talk about statistical analysis, it facilitates your research, it gives an edge to your research, and it aids your research with logicals. Okay, logical sequencing, the numbering. Okay, so all those who are interested in formulating any model or framework, who are working on any theories, or who are focused on any particular quantitative analysis of side, for them it's very important. I does not mean that for others it is not. Okay. So now let's start first understanding about what is statistical analysis. Okay. Now, when you talk about any research, it's about how you collect the data. Now, like I always say in my sessions, that data does not only means numbers. Okay. What I meant data in research is that any sort of information, any sort of information which is to be utilized in your research is called data. Sorted? It can be when you do interviews, it can be when you collect some sort of numerical data, that is also data. The information which you collected from the interviews, that is also data. Okay, so any sort of material which you use, collect for your research and its findings, that's called data. Okay, so just don't get stuck that data is only when we talk about numbers. No, it does not mean that. What is statistical analysis? Data is clear, right? Stats you understand. Now, what is statistical analysis? Now, when we collect the information, here information I means data again. When we collect the information, the data, basically how others should understand it. Now, many times I get the questions from my student that why it is important to do statistical analysis. So, my simple explanation is this: you did research from your perspective. You are involved in that process. You understand your objectives, but we do not do research just for our own sake. It also should be understood by others. Okay, so statistical analysis is that process which facilitates that understanding. So, whatever that data means, whatever that information means, whatever trends, whatever patterns are there, like you took interviews of 10 people, so is there anything common in the interviews of those 10 people? Is there anything different in those information given by those 10 people? That it is being uncovered by statistical analysis. Okay, all right. Now, for research particularly, we do research for corporates, we do research for government, we do research for industries as well. Now, it becomes easy for them to make more quantitative, more logical decisions once that research is backed by statistical analysis. So, it's easy for the decision making process to find out what that information means. Okay, so in simple language, if I make you understand that statistical analysis is basically that process to simplify those numbers, to simplify that information, to simplify that entire gathered data for others to understand. That's why, many a times students get confused, academicians get confused that what test to apply, how to do that, how does it means. It's very simple. Your statistical analysis or a major part of your research methodology get derived once you formulate your objectives. Your objectives tells a great deal of story which paves the way for your methodology. Okay, so make sure that whatever objectives you formulate, they should be crisp, they should be clear, and it should relate to your methodology, which eventually later take turns to statistical analysis also. So all your facts and figures, statistical models, planning, survey studies, they all are the useful techniques to do statistical analysis. All right, okay, I hope so far so good is understood. Now, further moving on to statistical analysis, basically, as we discuss in very simple and easy term, that it actually helps you to make meaning from the information collected. Very small example I'll again give you. You conducted a survey on people's choice of how much they like to visit malls. You just want to understand that how many people likes to go to mall on weekends. Now, let's say this information is important for me as a company because I want to open a new mall, a new shop in the mall. So I would like to understand that actually how many people comes to the mall so that I can decide that how many people will actually come to my shop. Right. Now, me being a shop owner or industrialist, I actually asked some researchers to give me that basic understanding, give me that what's actually happening on the back foot of the mall, so that I can decide that which shop or which part of the mall I should choose, and all the later decisions. So the researcher collected the information that 50%, or he gave the survey to the customers or to the people, you like to go to the mall? They said agree, somewhat, not every day, only on weekend. So how can I as an industrialist can make a decision out of it? After the researcher will do the statistical analysis. So based on the statistical analysis, the information which I receive will be in the form of that 20% of the people likes to visit mall in weekdays. Okay. 80% of the people likes to visit mall in weekends. Yeah, on weekends. So it's pretty easy for me to take the decision that I can choose for a shop opening in the mall. However, I can only expect a large footfall on weekends, because the research reflects that number of people visiting mall on weekends is more than the number of people visiting mall in weekdays. Okay, so this is basically the rule or the role of statistical analysis in our researches. So it makes the data information processed so that others can easily understand. Okay, so for all the researchers out here, for all the teachers as well, academicians, researchers, scholars, my suggestion is that it's not important to make the methodology of your work to be too complicated. No, the job is to make the information to be understood by everyone. So choose the methods, choose just statistical analysis wisely, tools. Everything should be well suited to your objectives. I always say that, your objectives and your research questions, they actually pave the way to your methodology. Okay? Let us move further that why it has been done. I think that so far you all are must be having a very clear understanding that why we do statistical analysis. See, it is important so that others can understand your information. Okay, the statistical analysis helps in logical decision making. Okay, also one more important thing, you must have seen this you know in quite often when you go for publications in journals and all, that journals, they find or they choose for the articles or the papers who are backed up by statistical data. There are many journals like that. So statistical analysis, a properly done statistical analysis, also gives strength to your paper quality. Okay, all right, let's now understand the process of statistical analysis. Okay, let me tell you one thing. You can see this letter. This is actually R. So just don't be confused with this. This is actually R. So while transferring the PPTs to this laptop, it's just showing this alphabet. So this is R. All there with an accent which you see, it's an R. So let's have a look on the statistical analysis process. Now, firstly, you have to identify that what is the type of your data. Is it qualitative data? It is quantitative data. Now, when I say qualitative data, so let's say you have collected the responses from the interviews. So they are detailed interviews. That is qualitative data. When you talk about, sorry, when you talk about quantitative data, that means, let's say you have conducted one survey, you have distributed some close-ended questionnaires. So the information wherein the data which you have got is out of the options. Okay, so that is more of statistical in nature. So when I say statistical in nature, here it is I'm referring to quantitative, referring to number. So before you move ahead to statistical analysis, you need to be sure that what type of data you have. Is it a qualitative data or is it a quantitative data? Once that is sorted, I'm sure that half of your job is done. Trust me, half of your job is done. Then you move to step 2. Now, the step 2 is basically you need to establish a relationship between the data analyzed, that is whether it is qualitative or quantitative, and the sample from which you have collected. Now, many of you might be understanding sample very well, but those who do not understand sample, let me just give you a quick explanation. Sample is that representative or that representation of people from whom you actually collect the data. So let's say any one of you is conducting a research on students going, or rather I should say that kids going to kindergarten, okay, in Delhi NCR, Delhi or National Capital Region. Now, there are so many kids who are going to kindergarten schools or play schools. You can't approach anyone, all of them, because there are too many. You will choose a handful of that. That's also called a sampling procedure. That's also a process that how to go with the numbers, how many people we should choose for our data collection. So the number which you choose, the number of people you decided to approach. So let's say you decided 28 kids. Okay, that's your sample. Another important thing to be noted here is in qualitative research, your sample size is smaller than your quantitative research. Okay, in qualitative research, your sample size is smaller than your quantitative research. Always remember this thing. Okay, you can't interview 80, 100 people when you're going for a qualitative research. Okay, so the type of data you are going to collect decides the nature of your research, that is whether it is qualitative or quantitative. All right. Please make a note of all these tips, whatever I'm telling you in between. Third step is that you need to create a model. Like once you are done with the data to be analyzed, your sample is clear. You need to create a model that clearly presents and summarizes what is the relationship between population and data. What I meant here is that you have collected a data from a sample. Now, let me just widely do it. Okay, you have collected data from a sample. Your data, your research should be like this, that it can be applicable for the entire population. What I meant is here, let's say you collected the information from 28 kids. Now, that results of the research should be applicable. That whatever your research is saying, it is not only about those 28 kids. Rather, it is applicable or it is about all those kids who are going to Delhi NCR play school or kindergarten school. Okay, so you have to establish a relationship between a population and a data. You can go for a theory also, you can develop a model also. Okay, now when we talk about a model, like you are generating a model, so for that statistical analysis comes into picture. Okay, then once you are done creating a model, obviously we can't say that it's whether it is a model is valid or not. That means whether it is actually be valid for the objectives we have set. Let's say we have set that kids going to kindergarten are actually attracted by the ambience of the school. How the school is look, how what are the amenities in the school, what kind of play activities in the school. Kids actually get attracted by that. Your model should actually prove this. So then only we can say that the model is valid or not. Okay. So whatever objectives we have set for our research, your model should actually be a answer for those questions and objectives. Okay, and if you want to predict any results which is from the future, for that you need to go for the predictive analysis. Okay, now that's what I'm saying. Whatever kind of objectives you set for your research, whatever kind of questions you set for your research, actually paves way for the kind of methodology and the kind of statistical analysis you'd like to do in the future. Okay, all right. Now there are statistical analysis method. Let me have a just give me a minute. Okay, I think now it will be visible to all. There are a couple of methods which probably, primarily you come across as a term. Many of you would have seen them, or many of you, will see them or will come across these terminologies while you are doing statistical analysis. Okay. Now, first of them is mean. I think this is that term which we have come across, you know, while into our school grades as well. One thing I forgot to mention here, that is, if anybody of you have a question, like Yogesh just raised a question, which I'll definitely take on, but please make a note of your questions, and we'll take them once the webinar ends. Okay, because if I start answering the question in between the webinars, this will stretch to no limit. Okay, but I assure you that every question will be taken care of. Okay, now getting back to what we were talking about mean and standard deviation. Now, first term is mean. See, mean is something which we have come across during our school days as well. In simple term, when we say mean is nothing but average, it says it all. Okay, it says it all. Now, basically, mean showcases the mostly followed trend. So, what is the trend which is going on in the sample or in the data? So, mean, how do we calculate is all the numbers whatever we have get in the data sets. Let's say we are calculating, our data is related to the heights. Okay, heights of the students. So some, let's say, and we are talking about the age in that. So let's say 10 years of age has this much of height, 11 years of age has this much of height. So we say that like 10, 11, 9, 8, 8, 8, 7. No, we record their ages, and respectively we can see their height. So if we want to find out the average or the mean of the heights, what we'll do is we'll sum all the number of ages, like 10 plus 9 plus 7 plus 11 plus 10, like this, and we'll divide by the number of ages we have given. That's it. We have taken the heights of 20 kids. So it is like 10 plus 9 plus 7 plus 8 plus 6 plus 11 plus 10, again divided by 20. Okay, and the number which we will get is the mean. Okay, now coming to standard deviation. Standard deviation, basically, it is also very important tool which we use for statistical analysis. How do we do it? Basically, it tells you that it analyze the deviation of different data points from the mean. Like, for example, the mean in the previous example of high age which we are talking about comes out to be 8. So, how the entire data set is basically closer to that mean or far away from that mean. Okay, it helps you. Now, standard deviation basically tells you that whether your research can be generalized or not. Okay, it is, you can actually remember like this. Standard deviation is that tool which tells you that whether your research is to be generalized, like, if I find out the data on 28 kids, yes, my results are applicable on the entire population of kids going to kindergarten. So standard deviation actually tells you that whether the results can be generalized or not. Okay, all right. Then comes regression. So these are also, this is also a very common term, common terminology. which you might have come across while doing a research or while writing a paper. All right. So, what exactly is a regression? When we talk about regression, it actually tells the cause and effect relationship between variables. Now, when I say variables, have a clear ear to this. Variables are basically those factors, those elements which you are actually studying in your research. For example, somebody wants to study about the happiness level of housewives, how much they are happy being a housewife. Okay, so what we want to study is happiness. Okay, so one variable is happiness. Now, in our study, we will explore that the happiness of a housewife is dependent on what other factors. They will also be variables, which will be further categorized into independent and dependent variables. So, when I say happiness of housewives, it is dependent on what? Me time, house help. Like if somebody has a house help, obviously, she'll get a free time to relax. Happiness level will increase. Okay. Me time, where there is no disturbance, where she can do whatever she would love to, happiness level will increase. If there is no me time, happiness level will decrease. So here in this case, the happiness level is an independent variable, sorry, dependent variable, which is depending on, let's say, me time, house helps, and other factors. Okay, so these are variables, are those factors or elements which we actually study in our research. All right, also, with the help of regression, I'm coming back to regression. Regression tells you the cause and effect between the variables. What causes this to happen and what is the effect? This kind of relationship, when you want to study, you will choose regression. For example, if I say that when a high school graduate is pressurized by the family and society, what is the changes, what is the effect on his psychology? So if the child who is a high school graduate is being pressurized by the family to choose their choice of career, if the family is telling the kid or the high school graduate to choose the choice of career they wish to choose him or her, what is the effect on his psychology? Got it? Okay. So basically, regression helps you to identify the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable. I hope I'm clear with the kind of explanation which we have given. Okay. Just a second, just a second. Okay. So when we say regression, so again, regression, anybody who would like to establish a relationship, establish a cause and effect between the two variables, you may go with regression. Okay. Also, when we are telling about the sorry, also when we are telling about the trends to be happened in future, in that case, you will use regression. So now, as I told you, if your objectives are clear, you have the explanation that I would like to find this, I would like to find this, it will gives you an idea, it will give you an idea about the choice of statistical method, right? So simple. If you want to find out cause and effect, go with regression straight away. Next term is hypothesis testing. Now, first thing which I always, many a times I got a query about this question, that whether our research should mandatorily have a hypothesis or not. So, answer is not every research should have a hypothesis. No, needless to have it. But that doesn't mean that you always go with the research which is without a hypothesis, okay? But let's understand what is hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement which can be said as an assumption, which can be said as an assumption unless and until it is tested. Rather, when you are conducting a research, you're actually testing a hypothesis, okay? And also, you derive hypothesis. So, it's also, depending upon the nature of your research, you would either test an hypothesis or derive a hypothesis. Let's first have a look on what is hypothesis. Hypothesis primarily is an assumption which we are establishing to showcase the relationship between variables. Clear? So, if the hypothesis you establish before your or on the onset of your research, during your research, you will test it. All right? Okay. That's called hypothesis testing. Another is sample size determination. Now, sample and population. I told you what is sample and what is population. So, you just can't say that let's have 10 sample size, let's have 12 No, there is a procedure to calculate sample size also. Now, sample size determination basically is that technique which tells you that how many number of people or how many number of respondent or whatever your population is related to will be a part of your research. So that is called sample. Okay. If your population is large, only in that case you will determine your sample. Let's say if you have a population of 1 lakh people, then in that case you'll have to choose your sample size. But if your population is small only, if you are, let's say, wants to understand the happiness level of or motivation of CEOs, how many CEOs we have in a company? One, right? In that case your population is small, there's no need to calculate a sample. You can take entire population as your sample. Okay. So what should be a sampling technique? It can be convenience sampling, it can be random sampling, it can be non-random sampling. Now that again depends upon your research and strategy. Okay. All right. Now there are a couple of softwares which you must have heard of and which we are using to do the statistical analysis. First out of them is SPSS. This is basically one of the most popular, especially amongst the scholars who are doing social sciences research. Okay. And it is actually very easy to use. It's just about that how you fill in the data in the software, and rest of the job is being done by SPSS itself. Okay. Next is Microsoft Excel as well. However, when we say that industrial research, is it many are still following Excel. However, when you say that academic research, SPSS, I would say, in my opinion, is more popular than Excel. Okay. All right. That is SAS. SAS is basically it is a cloud-based platform which also helps you to do statistical analysis for data visualization and analysis. Now, data visualization is when you represent the data in the form of bar graphs, pie charts. These are data visualization tools. Okay. When you talk about the procedure of SAS, they can it can perform multiple operation in one go. So you can have a speedy procedure operations of statistical analysis. Next is Minitab. Minitab delivers statistical analysis to help or to facilitate the data driven decision making. It helps you to create graphs, it helps you to focus on data analysis, Toolbars, preferences, profiles, all this can be customized with Minitab. For scholars, for academicians, SPSS still wins the race. Now, coming to types of statistical analysis. Now, when I say what should be the type of statistical analysis, primarily we begin with descriptive analysis. Okay, when I say descriptive, that means we are describing. Okay, by saying descriptive analysis, I meant that it involves collecting the data, it involves, analyzing, summarizing all the procedurals which we need to do on our data, and we present it in the form of charts, graphs, and tables. We, instead of making conclusions, we simply, what we do in descriptive analysis is simply represents the data with the help of charts, graphs, and tables, so it is more easy to comprehend. Now next come inferential analysis. Now inferential analysis, the word comes from inferring. Okay, now what is peculiar in inferential analysis is that you draw conclusion out of that. You are done with statistical analysis, you're making conclusions out of that. So again, every research statistical analysis need not to have those graphs, pie charts. What I meant is descriptive analysis. All right, now where you are actually making the conclusions out of your data which has been analyzed, that means you are doing inferential analysis. Okay, now here what you are doing is you're actually establishing relationship between the variables. What will happen about whole population on the basis of the data you have analyzed on a sample? So it should be very clear that your relationship establishment between variables, if you are doing, is inferential analysis. When you are focusing on making your data presented through charts, graph, tables, data visualization tool, you're doing descriptive analysis. Okay, all right. Next is predictive analysis. Now I think the name says it all, that when we say predictive analysis, it is basically that kind of analysis when, on the basis of past trends, that customers, there was high footfall in the malls prior to COVID. Let's say, on the basis of that, you would like to have a trend which is will be there in the future. Are you getting my point? So, whatever has happened in the past, you'll derive them and you will predict whatever events will happen in future. Okay, here you use data modeling, data mining, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms for this analysis, because basically you are establishing a trend on the basis of information you have. Next come in the run is exploratory data analysis. Now basically exploratory data analysis is very much similar to what you do in inferential analysis. Now you make conclusions out of that. Now here the point of noticing is that many times students get confused between inferential analysis and exploratory data analysis. Okay, now here in inferential analysis you're actually making the conclusions out of the data you have. Okay, that's what I'm talking about, inferential analysis. I think now it will be readable. When we talk about exploratory data analysis, very slight difference from inferential analysis is that in exploratory data analysis, we are actually exploring the unknown data. Okay, we are actually identifying the relation, what could be the relationship. In inferential analysis, the data is known to you. In exploratory analysis, you're actually exploring the data. That you see, try to understand the concept of it just by the term of it. You are exploring the data. Okay? So that's what it's called as exploratory data analysis. Causal analysis is the next type of analysis where I think, again, the term says it all. Here it means that, sorry, here it means that when we talk about causal data analysis, you're actually finding the relationship between the different variables. So if something happens, then why and how it has an effect on other variables. Simple as that. Okay. Now, if it rains more this year than the previous year, how it is going to affect the crops, how it is going to affect the other associated things. Okay. So here we are trying to identifying if this happen, then what will happen and other impact on the variables. Okay. All right. Now, very important thing is hypothesis. If the video quality is still not clear, thank you, Mr. Yogesh. Please change your video quality to 720p. Now, let's understand the hypothesis concept. First, as I told you, you make certain assumptions or predictions in your thesis, in your research, I would say. Now, whether, pardon for the backdrop barking of the dog, sorry. So, Miss Kajal, there is nothing to actually read in the slides for the timing. I'm just speaking, so just I think pay focus on that only. Read any which ways, slides any which ways you'll be getting at the end of the webinar. First thing, what is a hypothesis? I told you it is that assumption, it is that prediction which may or may not be true that you will find out through your research. Are you getting my point? You have to find out that whether or not, if I say there is a positive relationship between sales on the brand and customer footfall. That means if the brands are offering sales on their product, there'll be high footfall. I am just assuming that this is a just an assumption. I have to test it with my research. Okay? So basically, what this example of this hypothesis is showing, it is showing the relationship between sales on the product and customer footfall. And whether this relationship is there or not, we will have to check. Okay? All right. Now let's take an example of hypothesis. Let's say daily exposure to the sun leads to increased level of happiness. We are trying to understand whether when you are exposed to sun daily, I'm not saying how much amount or how much time, no. If you are sitting in the sunlight daily, it increases your happiness level. So here, try and understand. First, let me tell you the dependent and independent variables. Now, first statement says the independent variable is exposure to the sun. Okay, which is actually a cause also because this is causing you to be happy. Okay, so exposure to sun is actually causing your happiness, right? In other words, what I'm saying is your happiness is dependent on sun, right? What I'm trying to say is your happiness is dependent on your sun exposure. So independent variable is exposure to sun, which is the cause also. Dependent variable is level of happiness, which is the effect. That means if the cause is sun, it is increasing the level of happiness. So when you are sitting in sun, what is happening? What is the effect? Happiness. All right. I hope it is clear. So let's take a quick break here. for 5 minutes, and then we'll meet after break. All right? Okay. All right. We are back after the break. All right. So now I think you all have understood what is the concept of hypothesis. Now let's talk about how to develop it. Okay, so because hypothesis is something you need to be very clear about. Okay, so first thing is you need to ask a question. Okay, your research question should be there. So before you actually begin formulating, developing a hypothesis, you should have a research question which you would like your research or thesis or paper to be answered with. Okay. Now, many a time, now this is something which I would like to give a tip to. I have seen that in order to make the research more appealing, or probably they think that this is more what do you say, it will look more fascinating to the reviewers, it will attract more reviews. No, scholars and many researchers, they try to formulate very complicated research questions, and so as with the objectives as well. But my suggestion here it would be that kindly focus on a very clear, specific, focused research questions which are easy to do research on with. Okay, so for example, my research question is, do students who attend more lectures get better exam results? It's very simple. I want to understand that how attending the number of lectures is related to exam results. So I'm asking very simple question, that do students who attend more lectures get better exam results? So do not complicate your research questions, do not complicate your research objectives as well. Another suggestion, please do not have too many research questions. Similarly, for research objectives and so as for hypothesis, there is no need to formulate endless questions. See, understand, if you are formulating too many research questions, you are bound to answer all of them. And there is a time limit, or there has to be a limit to your research as well. So do not go for too many research questions, too many research objectives and hypotheses. Okay, now what comes as a step 2? Once you are done with the research questions, what come as step 2? You have to do some preliminary research. Now basically, when I say preliminary research, here comes the role of literature review. Generally what happen is that research, in research, literature review is a taken for granted step, or probably students, they don't pay attention much on literature review, right? So but here, when you're formulating your hypothesis, even when you're formulating your hypothesis research questions, doing a thorough literature review is mandatory. Why? You should be aware of the theories, the previous studies which are there. It will help you that what your research can actually look for. What I'm hinting is research gap. That research gap you will only get when you will thoroughly do your literature review. Okay? Now, at this point in stage, when you are doing your preliminary research, you will try, or you would like to construct a framework wherein you have all the variables identified based on your preliminary research, what we are talking about. Because once your variables are in hand, you would go ahead in formulating your research questions and objectives, and further on leading to the hypothesis and all. Okay, so your preliminary research should be thorough. It should not be it should not be taken as a step to be done, one of the steps to be done in researches. Because what happen is, here you are supposed to go through the previous papers, the previous articles. Don't take it as a boring activity, just do 100%, just pay your full attention into it. Then only you will be able to categorize all the variables, all the relationships between them and will identify them. Okay? Then formulate your hypothesis. Here is the time for you to come ahead with hypothesis because you've identified your variables, you have gone through the relationship between them. Now it's time to generate your hypothesis. So because at this point in time you must have been had an idea that what I am actually looking forward to. Now, when I say what I'm actually looking forward to, what I meant is here that here you must be having a clear idea on a research gap. And guys, let me tell you one thing very, on an important note that a thorough literature review, a thoroughly done literature review actually gives you a crisp research gap. If you have done it thoroughly, you'll be able to come out with a research gap, which will help you to go ahead with rightly formulated research questions and further on, hypothesis development. So, once your preliminary research is done, you'll be having an idea that what exactly I'm looking forward to, what I am aiming to find out, and what my research will answer. Okay, all these questions, all this point will be answered to you once you are done with your preliminary research. So you can write that thing like, do students attending more lectures get better results? Now you will write it into a clear sentence. I'm not saying I am writing a objectives research question. I'm done. I'm just what I'm trying to find out. Whatever I'm trying to find out, I'll write it in a statement or a sentence that attending more lectures lead to better results. Okay? This is a sentence. This is a statement. Now you will have to refine it so that it looks like a hypothesis. Okay? Your hypothesis, other thing is, your hypothesis should be testable because your research will be actually generating information which can test your hypothesis. So, something which is into your limits of research should be your hypothesis. Okay, you can different way you can actually phrase your hypothesis, but when I say you're writing your hypothesis, it should have all the relevant variables, whatever is the specific groups you want to study on, that should be mentioned, and predictive outcomes. Like here in predictive outcomes is better exam results. The predictive outcome which we are expecting is better result. Okay, all right. Then when you talk about hypothesis, there are two type of hypothesis: alternate and null. Okay, what you can see on your screen here is actually an alternate hypothesis. Okay, which is actually showcasing a potential or predictive relationship between two variables. When I say a null hypothesis, a null hypothesis says that there is no relationship. That means attending more lectures does not lead to better exam result. Okay, so actually you are formulating alternative hypothesis because every alternative hypothesis has a null hypothesis just as no or not in that. So alternate hypothesis predicts the relationship and null hypothesis does not predict any relationship. So when you are testing your hypothesis, let's say your result says yes, attending more lecture leads to better results. That means you have accepted your alternate hypothesis. Clear? Okay. One thing which I would like to mention here is, please make a note of it also. If you are accepting your alternate hypothesis, if you are accepting your alternate hypothesis, that means you are saying yes, when the students attend more lectures, they get better results. Just say, thereby we accept alternate hypothesis. But if your results are vice versa, they say that no, attending more lectures does not have any relationship with better results. That means, like, students sitting at home or work studying from home can also receive better results. That means we are accepting null hypothesis. In that case, what you will do? You will write, thereby the research accept null hypothesis and reject alternate hypothesis. Make sure, please make a note of it. When you are accepting alternate hypothesis, need not to mention that you reject null hypothesis. But when you are accepting null hypothesis, it is important to write that thereby we reject alternate hypothesis. I hope I'm clear about it. Okay? All right, let's move on to next step. Now here I'm telling you the ways in which you can actually phrase your hypothesis. Okay? So once you're, a statement, a sentence, let me go back here. Is this a sentence is clear as in front of you? You will phrase your hypothesis. How will you do that? You can actually add if, for example. So when you are doing if, so your first part of your statement reflects the independent variable and the remaining talks about the dependent variable. For example, if a first year student starts attending more lecture, then their exam scores will improve. So here, like I said, relevant variables, they are here: attending more lectures, exam scores. Okay? Specific group. So here specific group is first year students. Okay? And outcome of the analysis. Outcome of exam analysis is improvement in scores. All right? So try that all these three criterias fulfill. Okay? When you are talking about another way of phrasing your hypothesis, generally, hypothesis is phrased in correlation terms. Like, for example, you are stating a predicted relationship between variables. That means, for instance, like I've shown here, the number of lectures attended by a first year student has a positive effect on their scores. Okay, so what I'm trying to showcase here is the relationship. Okay, now if you're comparing two groups, now focus here. If you are comparing two group, that means here I'm just talking about first year students. But in this hypothesis, if you will pay attention, here I have two groups. One is first year students who attend most lectures will have better exam scores than those who attend few lectures. So the two groups here are one who attend more lectures and others who attend few lectures. Okay, I hope I'm clear. Let me just have a sip of water, please. Thank you so much. Okay, I hope I'm clear. If anybody has still any doubt, so if you want to showcase the relationship between different variables, then you can have multiple hypotheses. Okay, now relationship, when you say that, it can be either a relationship or it can be no relationship, right? For that we have already spoken about alternate or null. Now, if you have more than one variables, you can have different hypotheses. Okay. All right. Okay. Now the last step is to write the null hypothesis, which we have already discussed. Now, when you are writing a alternate hypothesis, it is depicted as H1. Okay. It is showcased at H1 or HA. Now, when we are writing a null hypothesis, it is always depicted as H naught, H0, whatsoever you may want to call it as H naught, H0. I generally call it as H naught. Okay. So, null hypothesis is basically a default or an automatic generated hypothesis which is there when there is an alternative hypothesis. All right. So, very clearly, alternative hypothesis is telling you a relationship. A null hypothesis is not defining a relationship, or it is telling there is no relationship. Clear? Okay. Now, it's important time to have a look on research design, because when you talk about statistics, statistical analysis, your research design should be very much clear. Now, what is research design? Basically, research design is an accumulation of various ways you are doing your research. Simply, that's what I, take it as a research design as. And that involves how you are collecting data, how you are analyzing it, how you are actually, answering the questions of your research questions. All this, a cumulative platter of all that is called research design. How to develop that? Okay. First step is you should know your priorities for research design. Okay. Priority is that whether you will go for multiple methods. Let's say somebody wants to do mixed method research, qualitative also, quantitative also. You'll have more than one research design. Okay. Whatever kind of data collection you want to do with, tool you want to do with, should be very clear of that. Okay. If one research design, let's say you want to do with qualitative research, but that will not yield you better results, then you should go for another research design. Just don't say that I'm not good with numbers, I'll not go for qualitative. Dude, for that you should be very focused on your research questions. Your research questions are actually depicting your research design. Okay. And when you are having mixed methods, you'll automatically will be having more than one research design, because mixed method is a combination of, I am sure all of you knows that, qualitative and quantitative. Okay. Okay. Now comes to the next part of priorities. Now here what you have to do is, as I have told you, like if you are doing experimental research, so there you will have experimental investigation, laboratory experience, laboratory investigation will be there. If you are doing, for example, quantitative research, okay, as I told you, that if you are doing quantitative research, statistical part, but it will not give you an in-depth understanding. Now what I mean to say in-depth understanding is, in quantitative research, you get the data, you get the information specified in numbers. Okay. On the contrary, when you are collecting qualitative data, you get a detailed information, right? You get detailed data, right? So many times researchers, what they do is they back their quantitative research with qualitative. Okay. So if you are doing quantitative research, you have to see whether it will be a perfect results analysis or not. If you have to back data by qualitative, that's completely researcher discretion. Then if you are doing for correlation research, it will not give you experimental research, because it is a technique which just tells you the relationship between two variables. Okay. So again, what I'm trying to say is that whatever research design you choose, you should be very well thorough with the pros and cons of that. Because in your vivas, in your interviews, in your feedbacks, the reviewer and examiner are surely going to ask you why this design, why this methodology. So you should be ready with the answers for those. Then couple of questions you can actually consider that: do you really have time to collect qualitative data or quantitative data? If let's say you decide for qualitative research, will you be able to interview the person in detail? Okay. If you decide to go for quantitative research, do you have a command on statistical analysis or not, or you can test the hypothesis or not? Because as I tell you always, that good researcher does not means good statistician as well, and good statistician also does not mean good researcher. Statistics actually is a part of research. So does not think that if your research does not have statistics, your research is bad. It's just that your research gets a little strong when you add the statistical analysis on that. Okay. Also, if you're choosing the research design, you should be very well aware about the fact that whether this chosen research design will be able to answer your research questions or not. All right. So all these things you should be very well thorough with it. Okay. Then step 2 is that what kind of data you would like to have: primary data and secondary data, qualitative data or quantitative data. So like, primary data is what you collect, secondary data is whatever there in the published form. Okay. Qualitative and quantitative data I have already discussed with all of you. Then comes step 3, that is data collection technique. How actually you are collecting the data, which all tools you will be choosing to collect the data. Again, time, money, your understanding about statistical analysis, and so on should be kept in mind. Okay? Okay, now when you develop a research design, please make sure that you follow, or you have a understanding all these methods like surveys. So when you are planning to go with survey to collect your data, you should be very well aware of how many number of responses you want, how will you distribute the surveys and all that. If you are going for interviews for data collection, how will you select your interviewee? What time and what is the location of interview? What kind of interview you would like to go with? Is it either it is structured, that means same questions to everybody, either it is unstructured, you will ask the question depending upon the responses given to you. Let's say I like to go to mall. Now your next question will be why. So different respondents will have different questions. Semi structured means couple of questions are same for all, rest as they respond you will generate the questions. Okay. Then experiment is also a way of collecting the data, that is either you are going for a laboratory test, what kind of experiment you would like to go for, and how you measure the variables. Then secondary data, like what will be your sources of data, what will be the reliability of references, how you are compiling the data source. So basically, whatever you are choosing the data collection tool as should be clear. Okay. Now step 3 was data collection techniques, which I have discussed here. Now step 4 is procedure of data analysis. Your data is collected, your data is in hand. Now it should be audience ready. Okay. Now, when I say audience ready, you need to analyze it. Okay. Now, here on the basis of the data you have chosen, quantitative or qualitative, you will go with the analysis. Let's say, for example, you have quantitative data with you. You'll go for either SPS or Excel or Original App and so on. On the other side, if you have qualitative data analysis, there you will try to find out what are the common patterns in that received data. What are the data trends? What opinions you have found out from the sample? Okay, so here the primary responsibility of you as a researcher will be to identify these patterns, to identify these trends, the repeated things. Okay, then you will write your proposal. Okay, now this particular component of research design, which you'll mention in your research methodology chapter, is very important for research proposal. All those, especially all those who are preparing themselves for defending their research synopsis or their research proposal, make sure you are thorough with research methodology, why you have chosen that, what are the pros and cons, how you have collected the data, how you are actually planning to analyze the data. All these questions should be done. Okay, all these questions should be actually prepared with. This is basically the methods of data collection. Secondary sources are all the documents documented from data. When you talk about primary sources, you can actually do observation, interview, questionnaire. Interview, I told you. Questionnaire, you can actually mail them or you can personally go and visit them. Observation is a process where you are observing what the respondents are doing. One is non-participant, where you are not a part, you're not disturbing them. You just note what they are doing. Participant is when you become a part of their the sample group. You are in between them and then you are notifying the behavioral patterns. Okay? There are some of the methods of data collection. Now, reliability and validity. Basically, reliability and validity is important when you are designing a questionnaire of your own. Okay? So there are two ways basically. Let's say you decided to collect the data with a questionnaire, which majority of the researchers do. Now, if your questionnaire is of your own, I mean, you designed it, then you have to check the reliability and its validity. I will tell you what is that. But if you decide to adapt a questionnaire, that means you say that I will take it from previous author's study. It is well suited to my study as well. Variables are more or less same, and I want to find the same information which he's or she's trying to set up, but from a different setting, different environment. You can adapt that questionnaire. In that case, there is no need to find the reliability and the validity. Okay? What is reliability is whatever results you have come up with. If somebody else, or let's say you want to repeat these results in the same conditions, it can be given up or it can come out with the same results. The questionnaire, if the questionnaire it used in same conditions again, it will give the same results. Okay, validity means that how much or how far your questionnaire is giving you the results which you are intending to find out. Let's say if I would find out the preference of people about the perfume brands, so my questionnaire should have a question which are able to give me those results. Okay, how do you find the reliability? That you can actually do the various tests. How is it assessed? Different time you can use the questionnaire, different observers. So basically, if whatever you want to find out is same, be different observers, be different time, results should be there. Okay, all right. Then sampling, we'll be talking about statistical analysis because this is a very important aspect. There are two type of sampling: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling means that every population, every member of the population, let's say there are 500 people, so everyone amongst those 500 should get a chance to be selected. I can actually take anyone. Okay? All right. Then non probability sampling, wherein you choose on certain criteria. Okay, then why, how to create an appropriate sampling procedure? Basically you will have to see that how much sample, there are different methods also to do the sample size. For before that you have to decide that, do you have a time? If you have a large sample size, do you have a time to contact them? How many of you will need to you will have to recruit to have different sample groups which you can actually use to represent your population. Okay, then how to calculate the sample size, as I told you. So basically the risk which you can actually take is usually 5%. 5% up and down you can actually take in calculating sample size. Okay, population standard deviation you should know, which is basically, it is an estimate of population parameter which is based on previous study, or let's say you have done a pilot study. Okay, expected affected side is, it is a standardization which includes that how large the expected results of your study will be. Okay, statistical power is generally 80% of or higher, which is that what is the probability of your study detecting an effect on a certain size if there is one. Okay, now there are different sampling methods like random sampling, wherein everybody has an equal chance to be selected. Okay, stratified sampling, wherein you are creating smaller groups of the population within the sampling. Okay, systematic sampling is that, let's say you are selecting people at regular intervals. Okay, non-random sampling is you are choosing on the basis of a certain criteria. Let's say I want only females in my sample or people of certain age. Okay, capture recapture means collecting a sample of data from one location in different point in time. Location is same, but point of time of choosing that sample is different. Okay, now there are some terms which you needs to be understood. Okay, all right, first is measure of central tendency. So understand what is a central tendency. Basically it basically summarize the statistics that represents, like the term called mean, median and mode. Mean I told you, median is when you are arranging all the numbers, so the middle number is called median. Mode is the most commonly repeated number in the data set. Okay, so together they are called as measure of central tendency. When you are measuring mean, median, mode, it's called measure of central tendency. Now variability means how far the data is actually from the center of distribution. That represents your variability. Okay, when you talk about range, so that means the spread of the data from the lowest to the highest value of distribution. That is range. Now if you see that there are 8 data sets, so the lowest is 72, highest is 287. Okay, so the range basically is from 72 to 287. In interquartile range is basically, it tells you the distribution of your data from low to higher. Like for example, from quartile 1 to quartile 4. Okay, now standard deviation, as I told you earlier, basically whatever is the variability in your data set. Okay, variance is, what is the variance of your average squared data deviations from the mean. See, standard deviation, variance, all this you can calculate from your SPSS. Okay, now let's talk about experimental and correlation study. Experimental study, basically it is a laboratory setup study. Okay, wherein you have controlled the independent variables and you are trying to understand the effects on dependent variable. Correlation, when you are talking about, basically you are trying to understand that which variable has effect or relationship with with variable. You're not controlling any variable. Okay, you're not controlling any variable here. Now, another aspect of your statistical analysis so is testing hypothesis. You have stated hypothesis. Now you need to test it. You stated null and alternative hypothesis. You need to obtain a p-value, and then you need to interpret on the basis of that p-value. Now, what is p-value? P-value is that probability that is used basically in statistical test. For example, let's say you have a hypothesis test with respect to a given data set wherein the p-value is 0.01. What does it mean? It means that there would only be a 1% chance of obtaining those data under the conditions which is described by null hypothesis. That means there will be only 1% chance of null hypothesis to be happening. That means no relationship. That means you can accept alternative hypothesis. Okay, so if the p-value is point till 0.05, you can accept alternative hypothesis. Remember this. If your p-value is point till 0.05, you can accept alternative hypothesis. If it is more than that, reject it. Okay, simple. Reject it. How do you interpret the results? Whatever information you have, draw conclusions out of them. What exact, let's say my p-value is 0.04. I'm accepting alternate hypothesis. What does it means? This means that students of first year, those who attend more lectures, will actually have a better results. That means attending lecture will give you more information. So whatever you want to conclude out of that, it's interpreting results. Okay. Now it's time for us to ask the questions, and we are open for the questions. Okay. All right. So let's have the question and answers. Importance of various tests. See, basically, Miss Lakshmi, let's, for example, if you talk about ANOVA, it tells you the variance, analysis of variance. ANOVA is analysis of variance. Okay, it tells you the variance in your variables. Okay, now when you talk about the t-test, what is exactly a t-test? Basically, when you talk about t-test, firstly, it is used when you want to test, or you want to know that whether there is a difference between the responses of two groups or not, or you want to test the hypothesis between the two groups, so you go for the t-test. Okay, regression, I told you that which we have discussed in the webinar. Now when you talk about chi-square test, chi-square test basically, Lakshmi, is that when you are actually doing the statistical analysis in the form of contingency table when your sample size is large. Always remember, chi-square is done when your sample size is large, whether basically two categories of variables are actually two categories of variables are independent in a test statistics or not, then you use the chi-square test. Okay, so you are actually comparing the two expected results. Okay, all right. So is there any questions? Okay, Jay Singh, Ani, you have, Kajal, you have a question that measuring happiness and it's intangible. In this case, the study will be qualitative or quantitative. See, basically here, when you are saying you are measuring happiness, so you can, it depends upon your research questions and objectives. You want to make it as a qualitative study or a quantitative study. Basically, if you just want to understand the effect of different factors on happiness, you can make it as quantitative. Sure, Divya, sure. We will. Okay, we will. Any other questions do we have? See, for the software support, Mr. Ravindran Nair, I will ask my team to get back to you. Okay, they will support you in that if they have, or if you want any statistical support also for this analysis type, I'll ask my team to get in touch with you. Okay. Do we have any further questions? Okay. Miss Ashwini, see, research gap basically is that area which is not been covered completely, either completely or partially, by the previous researcher. Okay, by the previous research, that area which is either partially covered or not covered in the previous researches, that's called research gap, which you identify once you are thoroughly done your literature. Okay. Okay, now let's talk about Mr. Ahmed's questions. If that instrument is being done by, or is being prepared by you, then I yes, it is important to do the reliability and the validity test. Okay, it is important to do the test of reliability and the validity when the tool is being prepared by you. Okay, now next question is non-probability curve. Non-probability curve basically it shows the distribution, probability distribution for the random variable. It is into bell shaped curve. Okay, all right. Next question is, I'm doing a research in economics. I want your organization. Yes, yes, Aditi, they will. Definitely, definitely. Alex, instead you suppose one has questionnaires for quantitative interview, qualitative. Where do we represent the results for the interviews? See, it is basically, Alex, you are saying an example of a mixed research, mixed method research. Okay. For that, when you are analyzing, you are actually you can follow a sequence. First you can present qualitative and then quantitative, or vice versa, or you can do when you are analyzing qualitative research, you'll either go for narrative or thematic or content. So after quantitative you can present the discussion. So how you will present it, Alex? Either you will say that the quantitative representation of analysis will be backed up by qualitative data. Okay, all right. Alex, I hope your question is answers. Aditi, you can actually the webinar slides of the webinar has the details to whom to get in touch with. Okay, okay. Emma, is it? I mean, yes. If you are present, validity done, but yes, if the tool is being prepared by you. Okay, so for yes, it is important. Yes, yes. Thank you, Aditi. That's to telling it to Swarupa. Thank you. See, Mr. Ahmed, what I'm trying to tell you here is that when we generate our research tool, when we design our research tool, so whether it is suitable for our research or not, we have to showcase this. Okay? That job is being done by reliability and validity. Whether other researchers can use it for the similar settings of research can or not, that is being done by reliability and validity. Okay? Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have a question? Hope the queries of those who have raised their queries in the chat box are done, are clear. Yes, Miss the Knowledge, Miss Sharifa. Yes, there are sampling bias, And these generally sampling biases are generally there when you have a large sample size, and also in case of convenience sampling also. For that, please specify your criterias beforehand. Okay, beforehand you should be very clear about the criterias. Let's say you said stratified sampling, your criterias of formulating those strata should be very clear. SEMA, when you say statistical analysis tool, see, as I told you earlier also, using too many research tools, or going for too many research data collection tool, does not makes your research fancy. My suggestion is, use only those research tools which are apt for your research. Do not present your research as a platter of research tools. Sure, Mr. Prajwal. Actually, the aim is basically to reach out maximum people, all those who even don't know the basis of research. That's what. So, Rupa, bibliography and references should be by the end of your thesis or your paper, is the detail of all the resource, all the secondary data sources which you have referred to. Pre and post questionnaire are prepared, can be, yes. So let's say you done a pilot study. You think, now there is a catch, Ashwini. You think that the results which you have got ask you to amend some changes into your questionnaire. Then you have to amend the questionnaire, and then again reliability and the validity. See, I think couple of people are chatting among themselves. So Shantanu said no. I don't know for to whom. Anybody else has a question? See, review. Yes, the literature which you have referred for your secondary sources, all those should be mentioned. The sources should be mentioned by the end of your thesis. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Does anybody else have a question? Yeah, sure. I mean, Mr. Ravindranath, it's actually a 2 hours webinar, so it is structured like this. However, we'll review the structure also. Again, see, Shubhra, when you're trying to measure the guest satisfaction, like said, like if you come to me as a research supervisor, I would say that go for a quantitative study. However, if you see, it depends upon the nature of your study. You just want to measure the guest satisfaction, the level of it, quantitative will do. Micheline, have you please reach out to the team? Thank you, Sarupa. Thank you so much. Micheline, you can reach out to the team. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Micheline. I have asked my team to, you can get in actually touch with them for. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was very generous feedback. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Does anybody else have a question? Thank you, everyone. Sometimes the hypothesis can also be framed only through literature. Yes, yes, of course. Any softwares? You want any softwares? That for that also you have to get for the team. See, writing this one word research methodology, I would not be able to understand what the question or query type is. Research methodology is a collection of all the tools and techniques which is suitable um, for your research. Yes, Shantanu, in that case, that those hypotheses will be framed once by the end of your research. Yes, you can get. See, for industrial storage, Shantanu, you need to for all for their information which they give you. For that, you should have either a logical literature support or your own data collection support. Sure, Aditya. Sure, sure. I'm doing research on blockchain in the auto industry, but difficult to find data. Yes, Ajay. I'm sure it will be it would have been a difficult task for you to collect the data. For that, you can go for if you want, you can go for industrial reports. If you're not finding any right kind of papers, you can go for industrial reports or probably some cases, some Harvard Review articles, Forbes articles. Just not purely rely on papers. Research title at which stage we will frame at the beginning? No, I would not say that from your research title just at the beginning. Research title, see, different supervisors guide you different um, time of formulating. However, research title is something unless and until you have time to finalize your research title because your research title gets under many changes, some adjectives or some in the but you know so till the time you have got the deadline for your title submission, just wait for the finalization of title. Thank you, Seema. Yes, that's what I told you, Ajay, that go for different kind of, see, when you go with articles, let's say something in published in Forbes or Harvard Business Review, they also many a times they talk about different organizations. You can take those examples as your cases. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for being so patient, audience, and being so interactive as well. Yeah, we can have a session next Saturday, like all every alternate Saturday we have. So we'll see. Sometimes see that's why Shantanu we back the statistical significance with the qualitative analysis. Focus interviews data in the same study with same set of questions. See, interview questions depends upon you have structured or unstructured. That will decide you can use the same or not. And if you are not getting the um, enough information with interview, then automatically you have to reformulate the questions a little bit. Okay. All right, guys. So let's have a session again, and you'll all be notified for the session. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for being so interactive. It will be communicated to you. It will be communicated to you. Okay? It'll be communicated to you soon. You'll all in a registered email. You'll be notified about the next webinar title. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.